Honorable Angela Alsobrooks, who graduated from Duke undergraduate and school and Maryland Law School, joins us today for the complete hour. County Executive, Prince George's County, former State's Attorney, Prince George's County. Prince George's County's first full-time attorney, prosecutor who focused a lot on domestic violence. You know, I read a story today, which is very fascinating, and I'm calling on your prosecutorial background. Everyone talks about AI and the wonders that it would bring, but also the scariness that it could bring. And Pikesville High School principal was arrested and escorted from the premises of his high school back in January, because there was a recording of him with racist and vile anti-Semitic, anti-black recordings on a voicemail. Lo and behold, just today, they learned that the athletic director used AI to make those recordings, and they just arrested him. How frightening is that?
Yeah, it is frightening. It is frightening. And you know, I think what it demonstrates is technology has both advantages, and then there's some things that are very dark, can be very dark about technology, that we have to be careful, that we have to have guardrails, we have to have security measures to make sure that it is safe in the way that it's used. And that's the perfect example of it, is that it can be used for harm. There are many, many instances where technology is used for good, and that's one of those instances where it was used for harm.
And in your experiences, how do you make that principle whole again? Because everyone remembers why he was ousted, the racism, the bigotry, but it was just all fake.
Well, you know, your point is a good one, because my father said something to me as a young child that I've always remembered. And he said, he calls me little fella because he wanted a son and he got 2 daughters. And so he calls me little fella. And he said, you know, the 2 things that you get that you have to protect with your whole life, because once you lose them, it's difficult to get them back, is your time and your good name. And I have remembered that for my whole life, and it is the reason that it is so serious, any effort to damage, especially in the case that you just mentioned, in a way that was fraudulent, a person's good name is a very serious offense. That's a very serious offense.
You know, the governor of Maryland will probably sign the juvenile justice bill. That is unprecedented, holding young people accountable in what some consider to be a very radical way. In fact, there are protests in front of his mansion. There are editorials in our Sun newspaper asking him to veto the legislation. How do you, as a prosecutor, a county executive, as the possible next United States Senate, how do you balance all those dissenting voices from the reality of what people face in their everyday lives? Fear, crime, carjacking, car theft.
So there are 2 principles that I think are important in every single community. First of all, I think people have a right to both feel safe and to actually be safe in the places where they live, where they work, in their communities. But there are 2 principles that I've talked about often, is justice and freedom. And when you ask me how I have framed my own thinking around these issues, it is that people deserve both, that you deserve a system that is just, where the laws apply equally to everyone, where the police us in ways that respect our dignity, where it's transparent and fair, and you deserve to be free, to have the freedom to drive your car without fear, to be able to walk in the grocery store. I want our elders to sit on their front porch the way they used to and not be concerned about stray bullets. And you know what? And you must have both. I think we have for years now talked about maybe you should have one or the other. We'll either have a system that is just or one where we might have our freedoms. And I say you have to have both. And so having systems that hold people accountable at the same time that those systems invest in people to make sure that they have the opportunity to be developed as people, to have the opportunity to be successful. I don't think that we can choose. They're not polar opposites. It's both. It's both and. That's what I would say.
Do you think the juvenile justice bill accomplishes your approach?
Well, we'll see. You know, I mean, it is very early. We haven't seen yet what the impact will be of the recent juvenile justice laws, but one of the things that I noticed about it is that it also holds the system accountable. You know, we talk about the juvenile justice laws holding juveniles accountable. It also holds the system accountable, and by that I mean it requires, for example, judges to have a longer period of probation for our youth. The juvenile justice system is designed for rehabilitation and treatment of minor children. You cannot rehabilitate and treat a child who is not also, depending on the child's conduct, if you're failing in the instances where it is appropriate to keep that child within the jurisdiction, for example, of the juvenile justice system so that they will receive the services that they need in order to rehabilitate their conduct. If you fail to do that, if you don't monitor the child, if you don't follow the child, if you don't check in to make sure that the child's environment is one where the child can even be successful, then the system is not doing its job. And I think there have been some failures in the system that have also permitted our children to not only be engaged in conduct that is dangerous and inappropriate, but that eventually also leads to the death of so many children. So I think we got to frame this in the way that it ought to be framed. It is not only for the safety and security of our communities, but what say we of the numbers of children who are killing each other, killing people in our community, harming them. And so the system has a responsibility also to make sure that it's doing what it ought to keep our kids and communities safe.
I find your eloquence on this topic to be insightful. You know, we recently sat down with the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, and when we posed the question to her about youth violence and minors being tried as adult, as young as 13, I could tell, you could see her humanity come forth. And she said, what is so unfortunate is that sometimes, no matter how rare it may be, there's just some of these kids we cannot save, and we must hold them accountable as adults, even if they're 13, given the crimes that they've committed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll say there's an African proverb that says a child who does not feel the embrace of its village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And so we do first have a responsibility to our kids to invest in them, to parent them appropriately, to make sure that we do all the things that children deserve. And I think the mayor is right. And there are instances where it is the case that the children deserve to have spaces where they're free and safe, but so do their parents and grandparents and aunts and other family members. So that the whole of community, if we have a child who is violent, who's armed and violent, who kills, maims, and destroys, then we have to also make sure that we remove that child so that the community can be safe. And that's fair as well. That is fair as well.
But is that, Ms. Alsobrooks, is that an indictment of parenting, of the church, of the system? Does that child outcome indicate something much deeper?
You know what, sometimes. I don't think we can say for any situation. It's not always the case. Because I have seen cases where we have had families who were engaged in the lives of their children, who invested in the children, and the children still made horrible mistakes. So I don't think that it is the case that you can say in every single instance what the problem was before you look at it. I think there are instances where children have behavioral health conditions, you know, that may have gone undiagnosed or untreated. There are children who have suffered from trauma. You know, you recognize the children who have observed violence are twice as likely to repeat it. Young boys are. And so this is part of what I've come to understand. You know, I started as a domestic violence prosecutor, and part of why I fought so hard to eliminate domestic violence was not only because it affected our families, but children are the invisible victims of domestic violence. So many of them witness it. And so what you see play out over time, either them repeating the conduct, their inability to focus in school, their inability to do so many things has to do with the trauma that they suffered that was untreated. And so I don't say that in any situation is always, you know, we don't know whether, sometimes it is the parenting or the environment. Sometimes there's something else, but I think, the question is never what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. Let's ask in every single instance, what is under it?
In the case of the Crumbleys in Michigan, where their child, they knew he had mental issues, they knew the child was disturbed, they gave him access to a firearm, he went to the school ground, he killed 4 kids. Parents will never get over that overwhelming grief, and yet recently they both are being sentenced to 10 to 15 years of jail as being responsible for that child's action. Is that what we're coming to now, that parents are going to pay the cost?
I think in some instances that was the case there. I mean, I wasn't involved in that case, so I don't know all of the facts and circumstances. But I think it is the case that if you provide a child, if you create the conditions where your child harms or kills another person, that is the responsibility of the parent to make sure, again, that that child is not only harming himself, but not harming others. I think there is a responsibility to play. In the case that you mentioned, I haven't followed, every part of that case, so I can't speak to it. But I think that parents do have a very important role. In fact, they have an outsized role to play in the success of a child. But there are some parents who are not capable of that, who need parenting classes, who need other supports. So that's the kind of work that I've tried to do over the years, is to make sure that we provide an environment for families to be successful. Everything from affordable housing, where they can have safe and affordable places to live. What happens to their health care? Do they have the mental health care and addictions care treatment that they need? Do you have real economic opportunities so you can be at home at night, actually speaking to your child at the table, having dinner with them, or do you have to work 2 or 3 jobs? It's like this. So there are so many factors that we have to look at, and that, before you make a judgment, you have to really also make those things available. But people should be held accountable for their conduct. I do believe that.
The Honorable Angela Alsobrooks, who is a candidate for the United States Senate here in the state of Maryland, is our guest for the full hour, and we'll be back.
Well, I can tell you that this issue is a very personal one to me. As the mother of an 18-year-old daughter, I believe so firmly that the privacy and freedom that women deserve to make their own decisions about their bodies belong to a woman and a woman only. It is so outrageous that we are at a time where it is not only abortion rights that are under attack, but we see now that these Republicans just won't stop. That reproductive rights are on the ballot, that we see also when we see IVF, we see that in Arizona now we have Republicans who want to charge a woman with a crime and incarcerate her for making decisions about her own body. So I, on my first day as a senator, will co-sponsor the Women's Health Protection Act to codify in federal law a woman's right to make her own decisions about her body. That decision does not belong to anyone except that woman, but we are now passing on to our daughters a world where they have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. This is wrong. I will fight it at every turn. Women deserve to choose. Abortion rights, reproductive rights, IVF, it all belongs to the woman.
Maryland is a Catholic state. One of the issues that you speak about is abortion. And people assume that they know everything about you when it comes to an abortion. Is there a point when parents, and I include the mother and the father because it takes both for that child to be conceived, go too far in their abortion?
I think the decision is a woman's decision.
Not the man? The father of the child shouldn't be involved?
Decisions regarding a person's bodily autonomy belongs to the woman.
But it's his child too.
It's her body.
But it's his child. He's a father.
What I'm talking about, and now understand when we're talking about this whole abortion care area, We're talking about privacy. We're talking about freedom to make decisions about your own body. That decision belongs both to the woman in consultation with her doctor. There are so many instances where the procedure that we're talking about is one that involves life-saving care. That decision is one that belongs to that woman. We saw so many instances where it goes awry. For example, you think about Ken Paxton in Georgia. There was a woman who needed abortion care. She had a non-viable fetus in her body. The baby had died. She needed important abortion care to help her so that she would survive. Ken Paxton sued her. She wanted to get abortion care. She had to leave the state of Texas to get the vital care that she needed, that her doctor prescribed that she needed. And that is the reason that that decision belongs to that woman.
You know, why do you think you're the best person to represent Marylanders in the United States Senate, and what skills do you have that you believe would make you more of an effective senator than David Trone or Larry Hogan?
Okay, let's speak to each of them. So I have the best experience. We're talking about the primary now in the moment, and then I'll address Larry Hogan. With respect to the primary, I have the best experience in this primary to represent Marylanders in the Senate. And that experience is that I not only understand policy, I have a very long history of working with policy, but I also understand how to implement the policy. You know, there are a lot of people who think that voting is the final thing that happens in Washington, but I know not only what policies are important, but I know how to for example, convert policy to how to implement it in a way that helps people's lives. I know, in other words, how to get back important resources from the federal government and how to convert those resources. I have built schools, I've built hospitals, I've built roads, I've grown jobs. And I think that skill set is one that is distinguishable from my opponent here in the primary election. And it means that I have the best experience. I think what we need is a person who knows how to get things done, who can actually deliver results. I have worked on firearms safety legislation. I've worked on domestic violence legislation. I've worked on legislation that would help us to grow our economy. But I've also, again, been able to draw the FBI headquarters to Prince George's County, Maryland, to work to bring that important federal resource. I've gotten $100 million in new investment in just the last 2 years to invest near the New Carrollton Metro Station to really grow jobs and opportunity. That's a different skill set. And that's what makes me distinguishable from my opponent in the primary. I'd also say for Marylanders, the issue of choice is very important, and there are many other issues that are going to be important. I think when you talk about, and I'll say this also, I think having a person in office who understands the lives and the experiences of everyday hardworking people is important to be in. And I think the people who are closest to the pain are closest to the solutions. I have had, not only by way of my professional experience, but the experience of having been a mother, the experience of really so many lived experiences that I think are relevant to help me well represent Marylanders, because I not only understand what is necessary and how to get things done, but I also understand the lives of the people I represent. When you talk about the general election, I believe that my views and the policies that I would support are more in line with Marylanders and where they are. When we look at, for example, choice is a huge issue for Marylanders. Marylanders are pro-choice. I am pro-choice. When we look at what the issues that would be decided by this next Senate, we look at the Supreme Court, the justices that would be appointed there, the ones that would make decisions about voting rights, the ones that would make decisions about immigration reform, would make decisions about so many other rights that are important to Marylanders. I believe that my views, that I am pro-union and that I am pro-worker, these are the issues, with that will be decided, and I have a record and have policy views that are more in line with average Marylanders, and I believe that will, at the end of the day, be a deciding factor for people as they vote in the general election.
So let me unpack what you've just said, because you've said a lot. Let's start with the manufacturing, and I'm talking about a different kind of manufacturing. Maryland, the state of Maryland has 27 gun manufacturers. In fact, Beretta is headquartered in Maryland. All these manufacturers create essential jobs that employ people. I think this is something that we forget when we're trying to limit and allow gun manufacturers to be sued. I also think that you would probably be an advocate of getting guns, illegal guns off the street, making sure that we don't continue to have the kind of escalating crime that we have. But how do you balance out the gun manufacturers, which create jobs and opportunities and what they create, what they manufacture, versus finding a way to limit the number of illegal guns that are placed back out on the street?
Yeah, my primary concern is making sure that guns do not fall in the hands of the wrong people. You know, and you mentioned that just now. For example, making sure that we take ghost guns, we eliminate the ghost guns. We have an overabundance of ghost guns on our streets. When we look at the escalating violence and the epidemic of violence, we have to eliminate some of these military-style weapons that are in great abundance in our communities, the AR-15s. There are gun show loopholes that exist that allow the guns to flow between communities. So these are the issues that I am primarily concerned about, is making sure that guns do not fall in the hands of the wrong people, and that we don't have this overabundance of guns that now we see they're in the hands of our children. So making sure that we have sensible gun legislation that helps us to prevent the kinds of violence that we have seen in our communities, and that we are able to do something about the epidemic of violence that has allowed people to go into elementary schools and kill kids. We have seen people now on college campuses. Something has to be done, and I think we need people of courage to decide what the sensible measures are that we can put in place to help us to really eliminate some of the gun violence and the catastrophic result of it.
The Honorable Angela Alsobrooks, who's a candidate for the United States Senate, is our guest. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back. Hey, make sure you go to armstrongwilliams.com and sign up for my email list. Do that now, and you won't regret it. If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com.
We know Maryland.
And we know Angela Alsobrooks is the right choice for Senate.
We know Angela will get things done.
From investing in education
to defending our democracy and the right to vote,
to standing up for a woman's right to choose.
We're all supporting Angela because we know her record and we believe in her vision. We know Maryland.
And we know Angela is the Democrat who will win.
I'm Angela Alsobrooks. I approve this message. Now let's get to work.
I can only imagine what it took to get all those people together for one ad. It may look simple here, but that was not easy, okay?
Yeah.
You know, I want to go back to something because in the conversation about the abortion, I don't want our listeners to think, because you're talking about the law, and the law is the law, and you're a former prosecutor, and you respect the rule of law.
Yeah.
But I don't want our listeners to think that you are saying that a man has no role in these decisions. And I want to give you a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I believe very strongly in the concept of family. I know that men have a very important role to play in the lives of their children. It takes a man and woman to create a child. And there are many, many decisions that the man and the woman make together. I recognize that I happen to be in a very positive relationship. I have a daughter, and her father and I have a very, very good relationship. We are not married, but we have throughout made joint decisions around our child in a way that I think has been really great for her, and has been really great for all of us, and that is important. There is no substitute, really, for what men and women do together. So I believe that very, very strongly. I grew up in a strong family. My parents have been married now for 54 years, and I know what positive relationships between men and women.
And your father is your hero.
Oh my God, is he? Oh, yeah. I'm a big fat. I'm 53, and I'm a huge, big fat daddy's girl. And so no, I know the value of men in the lives of their children. I know that they're that the relationship between men and women and who are having the children and parents, let me say this, that the role of parents is a very important one, and that parents, that the collaboration, cooperation between parents, whoever, is very important.
You know, now I want to come back to further unpack what you said, because you said a lot. Mayor Eric Adams, the mayor and the governors of Boston, all across the country, are saying, you know, while they are Democrats and they embrace many of the president's policies, the issue of immigration and immigration reform is having an indirect impact on their housing, on their economy, on crime, on resources that normally would go to others. And they're pleading with the White House how to balance out this immigration. And because they like to talk about how Greg Abbott is just dropping people off in Texas, but they don't talk about how the Biden administration also fly these illegals and immigrants into these places like Massachusetts and New York also. My question to you, since you mentioned immigration, what is reasonable, common sense immigration reform, especially for you, if elected as a United States Senator? This is an issue that you will have to address.
Yeah, I mean, I think you suggested something that is worth reinforcing. First of all, it is that legal immigration is very good for our country. That we have so many communities that have benefited tremendously from the beautiful cultural additions, the additions in our workplaces and our families, and so immigrants have added significantly to our communities. And we know that we have some concerns that have to be addressed. The border is an issue that has to be addressed. And, you know, I wish that we had been able to see the kind of leadership that would have allowed the bipartisan immigration bill that had been put forward by our leaders very recently, that would have allowed us for the first time in many, many years to have had the kind of comprehensive immigration reform that was necessary to address the issues at the border. That bill included the funding that we needed, for example, for Border Patrol agents. It would have included the kind of resources we needed to see, therefore, asylum claims to be processed. We have funding for the Department of Homeland Security. We need to do something at our border. We recognize that, and we need resources to do it. However, we saw the politics come in. Again, this was a bipartisan effort. At the last moment, former President Trump said, you know what, he thought this would assist him in his reelection if we had chaos rather than a solution. And so we need leaders who are continuing to work together in a bipartisan fashion to resolve some of these issues. Now, that bill didn't have everything we needed, because I think we also need a pathway toward citizenship. We need a way for people who are in our country already to have a pathway toward citizenship. So for me, when you talk about what does immigration reform look like, it's both and. I think we have to do what is necessary to have the resources and the care of keeping our borders safe. But we also have to make sure that we are creating pathways towards citizenship for those who are already in our country and for some of the ones that we want to be able who are escaping horrific conditions in other places. But we want a process that works.
You know, you're aware of our deficit, which continues to grow. How would you, as a senator, stop us going off this financial cliff?
Mm-hmm. So the national debt is a real issue for us. It is. I mean, in fact, the interest that we pay on the national debt alone is really very concerning. I think there are a number of things that can be done. You know, for example, I think that we're going to have to look at this, the corporate tax rate, raising the corporate tax rate. I know that we saw under former President Trump that we made a huge cut in the corporate tax rate. I think corporations should pay, like everyday hardworking citizens should pay, a fair tax rate. I think we have to slow the growth of government spending. I think we have to be careful there, and there was some bipartisan legislation recently that would have addressed the growth of government spending. I think we have to be very careful where that's concerned. I think that hopefully as the interest rates come down, I know it looks like now, you know, it's going to be a little longer than we hoped, The feds have been talking about the interest rates, but as those interest rates come down, I think we'll see some relief also where the national debt is concerned. So I think it's slowing the rate of government spending, making sure that we are putting forward tax policies that are fair, that hold corporations accountable and make sure they pay their fair rate, and hopefully seeing declining interest rates will also give us some relief.
You know, I want to come back to something we discussed also earlier when we were talking about the families and the kids. You know, recently the Senate and the House just passed this legislation. They've given TikTok a year to divest and sell to an American company, and we know the Chinese are just not going to allow that to happen. But I know you're strong on freedom of speech. And, you know, it's just like if someone is smoking and you know it's killing you, are you going to do the same? You're going to pass legislation to stop people from smoking? If you don't like certain books and libraries, you know, what separates America from everyone else is our freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And so is TikTok any different than from Facebook and Instagram and Threads and Truth Social and X? Is this just a Band-Aid? And we understand the damage that it does to these kids, but again, it's an issue of freedom.
Yeah.
Where are you in this fund?
So, you know, TikTok is a platform that is enjoyed by a lot of people. We know millions of people enjoy TikTok. I have an 18-year-old daughter. She enjoys TikTok. Having said that, we know that there are also some national security concerns where TikTok is concerned. I know that we have leaders in Washington who are, we saw the House and the Senate taking action, and what I think we need is some time to find a way to divest the ownership so that TikTok is made safe. I hope that there will be time to be able to do that. But there is a national security concern that is there. But you're right, there are millions of people who have found TikTok as a way to not only communicate, but we have people whose businesses have been built using TikTok. And I think that's important. So I hope that the leaders will be very thoughtful and careful, and that they will be able to find a way to have the divestment that allows it to become safe, and allows us to have the platform to be able to have free speech, as you have mentioned. I think it is important. I think social media, as I've mentioned before, has both benefits and detriments. We need to have guardrails at all times to make sure that it is safe. And where you see security risks like this one, we have to take it seriously while also trying to preserve it as the speech component of it, as you mentioned.
You know, one of the things that the country welcomes and really is dying in the United States Senate, Ms. Alsobrooks, are people like Joe Lieberman and Mitt Romney, who are willing to say, my party, not my party, I'm going to go with my principle. Even though my party tells me I must vote for this, it goes against the principle of what I know is right, and I'm not going to go along just because it's my party.
Yeah, I think we do need that. You know, so it was described this way to me, that we need leaders who have both convictions, strong beliefs, and have some courage to go with those convictions, which means that you have to be able to say what is true when it is true. And, you know, and sometimes we find that, you know, in the moment, maybe it feels the whole world is going in one direction or another, and then history will be the arbiter about whether or not those views are right. We've seen that on many, many occasions where history is the final arbiter.
Are you one of those willing to buck if it's a principal position for you?
I am. You know, I have convictions and I have courage. Now, I also tell you that I represent the people. And I believe that when you have a public official who is in office, that's the reason this is so important, that you know the people you represent, so that when you make decisions, you're clear that these are also values that you share with your constituents. I've had that occasion on so many, occasions. I'll give you an example. You know, today I was talking about a curfew. We are enforcing a curfew because we had some of our minor children who are unaccompanied, who have been out in the middle of the night committing crimes and doing other things. You know, there was a moment where the pushback came, and said, you know, oh my goodness, this is horrible. You can't, you know, impose a curfew. This is akin to house arrest. And I knew the people I represented, and that they agreed with me that families and parents have a role to play, and that if you have a child who is out at between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., there's a real problem. That parent has an obligation to know where their child is between those hours. And so that's why I say it's important to not go with the wind, but you have to have, and I stood strong and said, you know what, I'm doing this because I think it's in the best interest of our kids. But I also happen to be in line with my constituents who shared that belief. So I think it is that you must have convictions and courage, and it's important that you know who you represent so that you are adequately representing the views of the people that you serve.
The Honorable Angela Alsobrooks is our guest. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
You know, we can understand college students calling for a ceasefire, but I don't think many people can understand the anti-Semitism blocking kids from classrooms. Particularly, this is exam time. It's a very critical moment in their lives for everything they've worked for throughout this semester. How do you balance out these college campuses where we talked about freedom of speech, but it doesn't become hate speech and bullying?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say this. You know, we are watching, I think, in front of all of us, these are turning points in our country. And, I am not present right now on a college campus. I'm really trying to get a clear sense of everything that is happening on the campus. I think it's hard to get a sense for it unless you're actually on the ground in many of these schools. But what I know is that every student deserves to be safe on college campuses, that we should not ever permit a condition where hatred is permitted, where intimidation is permitted, where students do not feel safe. None of that is ever permissible, ever. That these ought to be places where people, again, should feel safe and be safe in their skin, be safe in their actual environments. And at the same time, what we are seeing is an attempt also to balance the right of students to express their opinions, and to have the freedom to express even opposition. And they can do that, but I think that, again, it is important that no matter where we are, the students must feel safe. They must actually be safe, that we never permit hatred and permit violence or intimidation or hateful speech. None of that is permitted, should be permitted on a college campus. I have a daughter who's on a college campus. And I think she should be safe there, and she should have the right, and this is what America provides, for you to express your opinion and to express even your strong opposition. That is permitted.
Now, you know, I'm going to challenge you. And I may challenge you because I don't know whether you've literally spoken out about this or whether you've used your surrogates. I must tell you, I could care less about race. It's not my thing. I'm an American, but I must admit, when I heard David Trone on the floor of that house use jigaboo, it really bothered me. It to my core. Mm-hmm. First, let me ask you, how did you feel when you heard the term jigaboo?
Oh, I mean, you know, that's a term that is deeply offensive. And, you know, similar to you, I heard, for example, from my father right away, who said, oh my gosh, I mean, what that stirred up, because generationally, the people who heard that, who were of a certain generation, knew exactly what it meant. And that it was used in a time where it really shouldn't be in any of our vocabulary. And for it to be uttered on the floor in a meeting.
So why was it in his?
I don't know.
What does it tell you? What should we take from his using that term?
You know, I would say the word speaks for itself. The use of the word speaks for itself.
Should he be given a pass? That seems there are those that want to give him a pass.
Well, I can't say what was in the mind or what the intention was. I don't.
We
have
do it
the
all the
power
time
to do that. But I can tell you that it is a word that is deeply offensive, and I think there are many of us who wish it had not been spoken.
Should it disqualify him?
He apologized and said that he misspoke, you know,
and you accept it.
Well, you know, I'm busy talking to the voters about who I am and what I believe and what I intend to do.
But the important question, do you accept his apology?
Do I accept his
Yes.
apology? Well, he didn't apologize to me. I mean, he said that he didn't mean to use that term. And again, I didn't spend any more time on it. I know that it's a term that is offensive. It's deeply offensive. He acknowledged as much. And beyond that, I wanted to spend my time talking to voters. I let David explain what he meant and how he meant it, and I wanted to talk to voters.
What is the one thing in this campaign that voters in the media gets wrong about Angela Alsobrooks?
What they get wrong? I'm not so sure at what they get wrong, but I can tell you what I want them to know. I am a mother of a teenage daughter. I'm a person who grew up in a working class family, and I learned many, many things from that family. I learned what it looked like really to work hard. I know what hard work looks like, and I know what it's like to struggle. And I have spent my years, all 27 years that I've had in office, really trying to create for people the kind of opportunities that I think this country promises so often, but sometimes doesn't get right in terms of delivering. You know, we hear a lot about second chances. We've heard all about it in this race, but I think that we can do at times a better job of delivering first chances at success for people. What does prenatal care look like? What happens when children really don't have affordable and safe places to live? You know, what happens when you don't have addictions care or mental health care when you need it? You know, the first chances, those are the things that I have spent my time and effort on. And it is a reflection of just how I have also lived. I mean, so much of the work that I've done comes directly out of my own experience, out of these communities where I saw people take care of each other no matter where they were. You know, I'm the granddaughter of a grandmother who spent time in her house cooking meals, putting them in styrofoam containers, and then telling me to go get Mr. Cole, who was the person who suffered post-traumatic stress disorder from his time in Vietnam, or go get TC, the person who suffered from alcoholism, and tell him that his meal is ready. And there was no judgment. This is what true servants look like, is the people who love all people, no matter where you are and how you got there.
You know, what fascinates me about what you're saying, and obviously that is so important, is that people really believe that if they're to elect you as their United States Senator, it's going to change their lives. It's going to make their lives better. But I will tell you, and I think many people watching will agree, it doesn't really matter who's in power. The poor is going to get poorer, remain poor, and the rich is going to get richer. In reality, where does the biggest change need to come for people that have that better life that they keep searching for?
It's economic opportunity, I can tell you without a doubt. It is that people want the chance to have a real honest opportunity to provide for themselves. That's what they want from us. You know, everything else I think really flows from that. If you have a job and you have the hope of having a real livable wage, if your family has the real opportunity to grow generational wealth in your family, to put some savings aside, to invest in a home, these are the things that I have come to understand people want. That's what they want from us. They don't want us to do it. They want to really just give me the tools to do it for myself and make sure the playing field is level. Make sure it's fair for us. That you invest in my community the way you invest in others. That my zip code doesn't determine the quality of my education. Kids can't help where they live. And so how fair is it that depending on your zip code, you might get one quality of education versus another? These are the kind of things that I can work to impact, and I have worked to impact.
Are there programs that you need to put in place to make this possible? Are continued programs that are already in place?
Well, you know what? We need to bring the money back. You know, I look at things like the Federal Tech Hub designation that went to Baltimore City. Bring the jobs there. Bringing the National FBI headquarters to Prince George's County grows cybersecurity and technology, brings about the opportunity to attract to that county the kind of jobs and opportunities that will allow us to grow generational wealth. You go to the rural parts of the state, they say, just get us some broadband and internet so we can make sure our businesses are successful. Bring primary care physicians here and specialists. I met a woman who said her husband had prostate cancer. He had to wait 9 months to see a specialist. This is when people just want really the opportunity to be healthy, to live successful lives. Bring the transportation to us. You know, I've heard from parts of the state that said they don't have Uber and other forms of transportation, so it's hard to get to jobs. And so that's what I can do as a senator. How do we get those infrastructure dollars back to the places where they're necessary? And because I have been an executive, I know how to convert the funding to real infrastructure. I know how to do that because I've done it. And so this is what I can do to help the people. All you have to, what I can do is create opportunity for people. You're right, some of these things, I can't impact every issue. I can create opportunities for people to have successful and healthy lives. That's what I'm after. And I believe people deserve it. I had it, you know, under the most, you look at a person like me, I'm the daughter of a receptionist and a newspaper distributor. And I'm so proud of it. And then from there, they did everything they could to try to give me the tools that were necessary for me to take care of myself and to do good for others. I just want to do that for other people. And I believe I'm the best person to do that. Not only because I've bothered to prepare myself, that I am competent to do the job, but because I have the heart for people that will allow me to make sure that I never forget the people I serve. I understand them, and I'll be batting so hard for them. And I think it's important also that we have a body that is representative. In Maryland, we don't have a single woman in our delegation. We have a 10-person federal delegation, and all 10 are men. And I think every person should look in the Senate and see themselves of every race, of every gender, and every background, because it makes us better. And so I think it is important, and some people are missing from it as far as I'm concerned. There are some voices that are missing in the Senate. And I think I provide a voice that is missing and that will help our policies to be more complete.
You know, you mentioned that your father was a newspaper carrier. You know, as a owner of the Baltimore Sun, I look at Cardin, who's retiring from Baltimore. Van Hollen is another area of the state. You win, you're Prince George's County. How are you going to deliver for the people of Baltimore who really don't have the direct voice like they had before in Senator Cardin?
I went to law school in Baltimore City. I was a law clerk on the Baltimore City Circuit Court. I have worked alongside so many colleagues from Baltimore, and we've worked issues that are very similar in our jurisdictions. The issue around the need for infrastructure for schools. You know, I built 10 new schools in Prince George's County in just the last 3 years. Many of my colleagues in Baltimore have been working along with the same issues. We've both been working to get the investment we needed to grow the transportation networks in our city. The food deserts, closing up food deserts. So I know Baltimoreans. I know them. I have been there, again, in very formative years of my life. Right out of college, I went to Baltimore to start law school and then to begin my career there. And I will be able to to serve the people of Baltimore City because I understand them. I understand the issues that involve them. And I'll be fighting hard for every part of our state. Again, from the western part of the state, the eastern shore, I'll be fighting for Montgomery County and Howard County and Charles County and Anne Arundel County. I've visited, thankfully, you know what? I've been able to visit and to talk to the people in each of those, all across the state.
You know, I cannot tell you what a joy it has been to sit down with you for the full hour, to see how much you care, your commitment, and your love for this state and this country. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Armstrong-Williams Show, the Honorable Angela Alsobrooks, running for the candidate of the United States Senate. And thank you for joining us.